Okay, thank you, Sue. Let's see, going to open the September 12th, 2024 meeting of the Capital Program Committee. I'll be filling in for Chairman Stephen Welch. He can't make it today. Officially called to order. Looks like we have everybody in person. At least on the committee, so nobody joining remotely, so we'll be able to make all Joe. So that's not Joe. We'll be able to make all votes by voice vote in person and here, just so we have anybody on the line. Curious who's in attendance, go around the room. We have Peter Kaiser, Vice Chairman. Jacob, around the table. Noah Garber, report.
Howard Matz.
Tom Holgate.
John Kitchener.
Okay, and Sue's helping us on staff. Yep. The meeting will be audio and video recorded, available to the public. Speaking of the public, any public comments? I'd like to join in. Looks like we just have resources from the airport joining us remotely and nobody in person. So we'll keep the public comment for now. Approval of the agenda. Make an approval of today's agenda, please.
So moved.
We're going to second. Second, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it unanimously. Sorry. Should we go to public comment? But we already went over that in the public comment. At the moment, if anybody joins, they can chime in. I guess without further ado, we will jump to the meat of the agenda being the fiscal year 26 capital request and out your discussion for the airports. And to represent on behalf of the airport, we have Noah with us. Hopefully everyone has a copy of the request. You guys all have this available. Good to put it up on the screen or anything. Okay. Fiscal year 26. Noah, I don't know. Do you have it in the same format as well?
I saw that and I have the email handout. The only, I think, difference I have is the order of the projects.
Okay, then, we'll just go in the order that you have over there, and we can all find it in our list. If you want to start, I kind of like to give everyone a bite at the apple as you're going through. So if you want to hit it at the top of your list, line by line, add anything you have for each line item, and then any questions anyone has before you go on to the next one, raise your hand and we'll go. Good, great. Yeah.
So starting off with the terminal projects. So can everyone hear me? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so the terminal optimization project occupies a monthly agenda position. Actually, do you mind if I back up a little bit?
I wouldn't mind you telling me which one you're doing
The dollar amount too.
and the code for it.
Okay. Do you mind if let me go back up to a summary?
Sure.
Zoom out for a little bit. There's this concept that I have a few projects that I brought forward that represent round pegs, trying to put them in square holes. I've been kind of a thorn in finances side, and this is my fault. They've been working to accommodate the airport. They're trying to plug these projects into the town's capital software, but it's not necessarily a good match. And I'm going to start off with the projects that haven't been a good match, because I do want to focus on why I'm going to present some information and the stage that the information is in relative to that request. We respond to granting opportunities at the government level. The federal granting cycle doesn't consider the town's capital project timeline. It's always been a bit of an odd couple trying to match that in time frame, and we work with that as best we can. And you'll see that when I get into the terminal projects, why we are at the stage where we are and how we're competing for funding. You're probably well aware we're in the midst of a complex PFAS investigation. So PFAS, it's not only a contaminant of emerging environmental concern, but the state and federal regulatory environment is constantly shifting, and you'll see that uncertainty in our PFAS request. We're asking for funds. And I'm going to tell you why I just have an item listed for construction and why I'm not giving you 5 or 6 specific task items to support that dollar. We'll go into some generalities. And then we're working as best and as quickly as we can to respond to public comments relative to noise abatements and our recent South Ramp expansion project. And part of being responsive to public comments means submitting requests that aren't necessarily complete as of this meeting with estimated funding. I'm sorry, I have an estimate, but I don't have an engineer's estimate. I've said an estimate for the capital request. I went back and I did a little bit of work on our debt history. So the airport has not taken on a debt obligation since calendar year 2016. The last item we took to long-term debt was in 2016 for an overhaul of a 1998 era front-end loader. We had some debt refinancing efforts in 2011 and 2012. I'm sorry, 2020 and 2021 to refinance 2011 and 2012 debt. But since calendar year 16, town meeting has authorized over 135 million in borrowing for airport projects, and that doesn't include items that were funded by reappropriation or fuel revolver or PFC transfers. And we haven't taken any of that debt long-term. None of it has been realized as a liability. This has been due to our ability to leverage and steward our federal granting opportunities, our state granting opportunities, absorb costs where applicable to our operating budget, and retiring short-term bond authorization notices with retained earnings. And this is generally the approach we aim to continue in the years to come.
So has the enterprise fund, but for the early 2010s, whatever it is, been able to pay out of enterprise revenues all of the outstanding approved short-term borrowings?
Yes,
And that was 130 million since 2016.
135 million.
Does that include AIP?
That includes the gross amount of the AIP, yes.
So the 90% covered by AIP would be contributing to that, to covering that 135. Yeah. Would you mind if I turn this air conditioner off? It might be on chance.
Could you explain to me AIP, because I'm new to this, so.
Sure, yes, Noah might be the best resource to do so. Sure, thank you.
I love answering this question, so
What was it?
raise a hand if you want to shut me on.
Sorry, what was the question? What does AIP stand for?
Yeah, so AIP, it's an acronym for the Airport Improvement Program. If you've ever bought an airline ticket and you've looked at your tax breakdown, you pay a lot of taxes on your ticket. You pay you have a percentage, an origin fee, a security fee, et cetera, et cetera. All of these go into a national trust fund that the FAA then redistributes to airports based off of the activity levels at that airport. And those are funds, they're stakeholder driven funds that pay for improvements at airports. So it's an entitlement program that the federal government runs. When the airport takes on eligible capital programs, so runways, taxiways, aprons, environmental planning studies, those are what's known as AIP eligible funds. So we draw funding from the trust fund. The typical split for an airport our size is 90% coverage by the FAA, 5% coverage by the state DOT Aeronautics Division, and then 5% for a local sponsorship. That's standard. Those splits, really, they can differ from project to project, but the 95-5 is fairly standard. So for example, when I talk about the ARF truck Airport 3 replacement, that is 90% federally funded, 5% state, 5% local share, because it's an AIP eligible project.
So now, do you have to lobby for these, every year, or how does that kind of work?
So lobbying, I wouldn't say lobbying, because lobbying would technically be disallowed by the FAA. We have annual capital program meetings like we're doing here, but we do it with regional FAA staff and DOT staff. And we present our 5-year capital improvement plan for the airport, and it's based off of our priorities, as the airport manager, working with the airport commission, FAA priorities, and any evolving safety standards that they change.
Can you repeat again? I forgot it was 90 from,
95.5.
Well,
I thought you, yes, 95, 5 and 5, and you got to 105.
90/5/5.
And the 90 is the government, the first 5 is
State.
90 is the federal
FAA.
government,
FAA, second one,
FAA, second one is.
and the
state
last one's
government.
local.
Local.
State DOT and us.
So I'm new to this. This is my first year on the jury. So I have a question then, Peter, I guess for you, is if NOAA is going through that kind of process for everything AIP, which seems like it's the majority, what role do we really have in that part of it? Or should we really be looking at the part that is not coming from these other state, federal?
yeah, I mean, I think the easy answer is typically anything that's AIP funded, let's say, or AIP qualifies for AIP is only 5% covered at our local level, and it's typically we're very much in favor of. And it also,
Yeah.
for the most part, I think a lot of the times it's required by airport maintenance and upkeep. That's, you know, kind of my level understanding. but-
Yeah, I was gonna say the town needs to. Make a full commitment for the full amount and then gets reimbursed. So.
Okay.
So the project needs to be supported by the community
Before it gets to AIP?
before it gets, and then it gets reimbursed at a later date, whenever that is. So it still needs, I think, it still needs to get presented to town meeting to get approved on.
And
For
then,
the project,
yeah,
Is
okay,
that always
even though it's kind of a no-brainer.
That's
Yeah.
always true?
For
For
AI
all of your
for
AIPs, they have to be
yes.
100%
I
funded?
might be wrong, but that's my understanding.
yeah,
We still
it's just,
need, we still need to,
Just one
as a
second, I don't-
community, support the project and approve it.
Well, it comes down to what we've been doing in the past. So is that true that 100% of all of the AIP entries need to be funded in full first before you get the 90%?
That's my understanding. The FAA looks for a relevant community or sponsor endorsements. of the project, and
Does
that's
it need to
typically-
be by having the whole 100% allocated?
I defer that question back to Brian.
Yeah, from what I understand, I don't know if there's a guarantee for the funding. It's almost always comes through, but you still need, and Brian can explain it better. You still need full funding, and maybe Susan has a
Right,
good answer.
Any clarification here?
Sure, thanks, Mr. Chair. So these have to go to town meeting for the full value of the project, including the projected AIP reimbursement, because the airport would not be able to enter into any contractual agreement for the work if they do not have the full value of the contract available at the time of contract signing. So we have always taken these A through Capital Program Committee and then B through Finance Committee, because they must be on the warrant, because the 100% funding has to be authorized at town meeting so that we have the necessary authorizations to expend for the project.
okay, thank you, Brian.
And I
You're welcome.
I don't want to muddy the waters, but we recently have a charter amendment. I'm going to forget the, in terms of, I think it was maybe Article 94 from the 2021 annual town meeting, where if we do have an opportunity that's out of sync with town meeting, we can approach the airport commission, finance committee, and select board to raise capital for grants available opportunities. So that wouldn't require town meeting if the schedule is prohibited from heating.
Well, actually, though, it potentially could, because that home rule petition that was approved that allows us to do that also requires an advertisement in the paper, and if 10 taxpayers submit an opposition or to it, then it does require town meeting approval. So it's a multi-step process to be able to do that, which we have used before, but it was, hopefully we don't have to use many times on a go-forward basis.
Thank you.
Yeah, I was just trying to get clear, which is the cart and which is the horse kind of thing, which comes first. So I understand that now, so.
Town
Thank you.
first, AIP.
Yeah.
Once town jumps on board.
Hey, Brian, would you sign a contract? Would you allow a contract to be signed if in fact the federal money hadn't been committed to?
Looks like we lost Brian for a second. Put a pin in that.
Hmm?
Put a pin in that, looks like we lost Brian. For a second. Chris, did you have?
I was gonna say, I mean, these AIP projects, these are somewhat recommended by the FAA. These are sort of stepping points for keeping up with regulation and is that right? And so that is, I don't think these are projects, these aren't projects that we just come up with at the airport and say, "Oh, I hope this works, I hope this, this is, they kind of recommend them. It's on in the queue for,
They're the FAA, DOT, and the airport's best effort to meet the requirements.
Yeah, I'm just trying to get clear that, this is a little different than anything else in the town, in that this is, safety, no matter what the project is, somewhere along the line, safety is involved. So I'm kind of feeling in my own mind, when you mentioned, the review you have with the FAA, well, that's competent technical people talking to other technically competent people about what's needed to run an airport, which is a little bit different to how many hands can you get up at town meeting.
usually it's not a majority of, sometimes it's only two.
Yeah.
Out of like maybe 12 requests. So
Okay.
it's not usually a majority, it's usually a few, but usually significant sized projects.
Thank you for that.
But if the funding didn't come in federally, we don't have to move forward.
That's a question. Would you sign the contract though? Because the implication is that we wouldn't have approved the total amount if we intended to sign a contract, we needed that. And then we signed the contract and then the federal funding didn't come through. What happens? That's the question. So that's why I asked Brian that question.
One question might be, has that scenario ever occurred where we signed a contract assuming we were getting 95% funding?
No,
from
I would
the federal
not.
state?
I would not recommend the airport takes forward a federal requirement without
Yeah.
federal funding. Absolutely not.
I don't recall that ever
Yeah,
happening.
same. And I think we've always,
So if the federal funding is committed to before you've entered into the contract, is that correct? Then we're approving for the total amount, even though we know the federal money is committed to. That doesn't make sense to me. I didn't understand
So-
that.
The reason for that, and I'm going to really oversimplify it, if the airport screws up their management of their grants, if they're operating in a wantonly unsafe condition, if they're committing civil rights violations, the FAA will decide, could consider not reimbursing eligible costs, in which case the airport is on it.
But
That's why we try to follow to the T all of our.
Can they get out of a funding commitment because of the kinds of things that you listed if they've already agreed to fund it?
Yeah, so, the airport commits to grant assurances, which are exactly the same items that
Yes,
mentioned, we'll implement the US DOT's civil rights goals, the FAA's safety goals. If we don't uphold that, the FAA can pull funding on the project.
that
No.
they've approved and committed to.
Now, for example, if we've taken on a $5 million taxaway project and we're waiting for $4 million of reimbursements and we have not correctly managed the safety program, the FAA would not
Wow.
reimburse that for them.
Okay.
and I mean, just to be clear, every federally certified or managed airport in the country goes through the same program, right? Same reimbursements, same.
So, John, you made a statement that that's the only difference, but this airport operates as an enterprise fund. So it retains its revenues unless they're pulled by the government for the general fund. So that they can rely on the enterprise revenues from fuel sales, for instance, and other service fees that they get to pay for the things that the costs that they incur.
I mean, we probably should get off of it, because I'm sorry to drag you
No, you
into,
had to ask the question.
into a thought process, because my thought process is more about the process that we go through on everything. And,
Right.
you know, for me, a basic question is, are we here to approve what the funds that the town are going to expend, whether it's the airport or the DPW, anything? Or are we here to look at the total before funds have been, you know, granted from whether it's the FAA or somewhere? That's all. And it's not really for today. So
Yes.
thank you, though.
I would say, I think for the airport and AIP eligible requests, we've always operated on the assumption that the commitments are going to come in, we're really only spending the 5% of the state that the
Okay.
town is. Going to hold.
Right, thank you.
Okay, so thank you for the background, thank you for entertaining us, with regard to any program, good refresher for everybody. More than I had ever known about it in the first place. And if we want to start going through your requests.
Okay, so I do have the sheet with me. The first fiscal year 26 project listed is AIP terminal improvements supplemental funding, and we have an amount of $1 listed. So I have thousands of pages of documents. I you know, I don't think anybody wants to see thousands of pages of documents forwarded. But I'd say the terminal optimization project is a monthly spot on our agenda meeting. You know, for follow-up, I'd be happy to provide the YouTube videos and the timestamps for the start and end of those presentations, whether it's by the architect, by our engineering consultant, or by staff. But we're currently in the design phase for a project utilizing some of the funds authorized under our existing $17 million authorization. We're looking to overcome the limitations of our current space. When I started at the airport, we were still in a situation where 90% of our passenger traffic was on non-secure airlines, what we call the Part 135 commuters, the Cape Air, the Island Air, the Hyannis, to the Vineyard, to New Bedford. Over the last decade, that's reversed. 90% of our passenger traffic is now on regional jets to major hubs, Boston, JFK, Chicago O'Hare, Charlotte, North Carolina. But the space that we've allocated for each portion hasn't changed, and we need to get the terminal caught up to those space requirements. So we call it an optimization project. I've stayed away from the term expansion because we've avoided it both in practice and in branding. We really are looking predominantly to re-optimize the space available in the terminal, do limited infills of areas and small expansions when needed. And so we've been presenting all of this information to the Airport Commission. I don't have a budget number for you yet because it's a little bit premature. I'll have sort of an order magnitude estimate for my Airport Commission meeting tonight, and I'll have a more informed engineer's opinion of probable costs by October. But the reason for bringing it forward now is that we have submitted one bill ATP application, which follows the AIP funding splits. So we are competing for funds in this fiscal year. That program ends in 2025, and we'll submit funds in that program year as well. That program authorizes up to $20 million in funding for each terminal project. We'll be applying in 2 years. The reality is selected projects have been more likely to achieve the $3 to $5 million range. The FAA's DOT's goal under this program seems to have been to distribute as much money as widely as possible rather than pick one or two critical projects.
So you have it $1 there.
I have $1 because something needed to be entered into the software and I did not have. I didn't want to shoot from the hip. I know voters are price conscious, board members are price conscious. I didn't want to put something in there until I had a number.
I will say, on the website, the Rory website, it is listed as 9 million.
Well, I was just gonna get to that and ask, how much of the 9 million that was in fiscal year 24 hasn't been spent?
So most of this hasn't been spent. I'd have to ask Maria to look up what's been in the funding, but I think it's just our design and our OPM fees.
So-
to date, which would be under $1 million.
But so you've had 9 million approved,
17, right, total.
So I've had 8 million approved, I
7 million
believe
total?
8 million in a 2022
Yeah.
appropriation. 9 million in a 2023 appropriation,
And
so
you-
17 total.
does the money exist in an account? Did you reserve for that?
No, it exists in concept. I think we may take a short-term ban on it in this year.
So the 17 was approved, but never
17 was
borrowed.
approved. 17 was approved but not borrowed.
So that's another issue so we approved it, but you didn't borrow it, so should we have approved it? Meaning
Yes.
that's another thing, getting to your question about what are we approving? What, are we approving an actual expenditure? Or are we approving a budget item that may or may not be expended?
Putting the ability to.
The ability to borrow, right? Yeah.
Right, but we're doing a budget, though, a real budget, not the ability, not the prospects of doing something, but what you really need.
Well, when you say we're doing a budget,
It is, but that's not, in the corporate world, that's not the way that things operate. So that's why,
Yeah.
he and I have been kind of.
Yeah,
peppered
this is
with
where I
questions.
keep running aground, that this is not,
So somebody asked me what the budget was
The
for the
business
town, and that
rules.
17 would have been in the
I don't
budget
know if that's
for capital
this
expenditure.
Committee is charged with running the business, so. to speak,
well,
that might also
when I,
be biased.
what I mean is, I'm not gonna repeat how I just said, I have
Yeah.
the same problem. Yeah.
Right, because if somebody said,
Yeah.
what's the capital budget for
Yeah.
2026, you would have some number in there that may or may not be a real number.
But it sounds like, no, that you're gonna have a lot more to say on this in sort of November then. So this process that we're going through is going through to January, so maybe we should invite Noah back.
Yeah, I mean, we always have a chance to request updated.
Well,
information.
given the
Anything-
numbers, given the size of the numbers, I mean, there are, every week that there are sort of one number that stands out, and this would be, for me, this would be a bit like the water company, where it's out there, it's just not quite in the radar, yeah.
Yeah.
So,
And
I
you
mean,
said
Noah, would
October,
that,
You think? we're
would
fine
that be
with-
okay to bring it back and?
Typically, I'm back for several meetings, so.
If we don't have any shot in the dark on that amount at this point, but October, we should have more
Yeah.
insight than, yeah. we-
That'd be a good
more
discussion in
information
November,
before.
because it sounds like the numbers are pretty significant.
Well, you can see that I have 17 million
Yeah.
and I'm back for more.
Yeah,
And I mean, we do see this with supplemental funding, which we, get once, sometimes twice for projects where you go back to plans and designs and you come back, as the budget's higher, then you supplementally fund and then it's being one of the budgets.
Two questions. I don't know, Noah, Tom might have been here, but in 2023, when 8 million was approved, I'm assuming these last few, requests, the 8 and 9 were also AIP? As far as you know?
So we've messaged that it's similar to the AIP
Yeah.
program, the bill AIG, Building Infrastructure Law, Airport Improvement Grants, follows AIP funding eligibility and split requirements. So it's just easier to say it's an AIP-like program.
So if you generally have a $17 million balance, I know you said you were gonna check and see maybe what money was allocated so far, and maybe that's something we can request. But I'm curious, in 23, what was the request for? And if it's 2-3 years later, what was the request for that it's not been spent in 2.5 years? I'm curious to know that, and then also, what was the reason for, just the $1? Is that just, you don't have a number yet, or there's no number this year, it's just to keep the project, in the forefront?
I don't think I think it's something specific with the Plum software. You know, software can't accept a no dollar entry for the project.
Because we're finding that we'll be back in October.
I think I submitted my form saying to TBD.
Yeah.
And that's not a valid entry for the program.
And Chris, in regard to your first question, so in 23, when, you know, we got the first question for 8 million, I would imagine that it was this same project that's just gone through newer iterations year over year, expansion of scope, which has caused supplemental funding in 24 and now again in 26. Is that safe to say? And we've only really gone through design and OPM at this
Yeah,
point,
so-
which for a little north of $1 million.
Yeah, around $1 million, roughly $1 million. You have to imagine, a request that was made in 2022 was on a cost basis from 2020 and 2021. So in addition to price escalation, we have initial design efforts. And I look at the scale and the scope of the work that needs to be done. And typically these projects go up rather than.
Yeah, I mean, we can't look at this and say, well, this is your balance, because really, we don't know what's been spent yet, so I can't go on this, but it would be nice.
So
we
Peter,
know
I have a
that,
note to
know
that,
What was,
Christie.
what the balance.
I wrote a
would like to
note
be spent.
based on your question to follow up with, to confirm how much of the approximately $1 million was the number. And the second is, what's it look like for 2026? In real money being spent. So no, we would ask Noah to get back to us.
Because, you know, another part about this is when you mention that, you know, escalation of costs. I mean, anything that was costed in 21, 22, 23. I think we all know.
Or
that
last year.
we're gonna get a major shock. And, or maybe it isn't a shock anymore. We just know it's gonna be, it's not gonna be another 4%. It's gonna be another, you know. I don't double
Sorry.
digit. Yeah, so,
Apologies, John.
no, I'm just saying that the cost escalation on anything construction related on the island from even last year, let alone earlier, it's gonna be significant. So, you know, no, it would be good. I think when you're doing this, whatever you're doing in October, to try to, you know, be as realistic as we can on, you know, what the construction numbers really are gonna be.
Well said, and I think it's not just the airport, but we see it with a number of different departments where if the project isn't essentially near final rendition before costing is secured, or cost estimates, you know, if something has to go back for major revision, any cost estimates made prior essentially being thrown out the window, and then we have to recost.
Yeah,
And we've seen that 2 or 3 times a year with mostly construction related projects. Anything else on it? No,
Just, you know, on the item of cost, I just want to mention the revenue side for a terminal. The sort of the contrast that I make to facility, and I'm not picking on our island home. I love the purpose. I love the staff. But reimbursements from our island home are capped by what Medicare will pay. My cost assessment isn't capped. My opportunity to recover costs is, I don't want to say infinite, but as I build new facilities that serve airlines that operating the terminal, I can assess these costs back to the terminals. You know, I don't want to give the impression that I'm not cost conscious, but I'm revenue and I'm accounting center focused. You know, all of these spaces are recoverable to airlines. They increase other airport revenue through concession management, branding opportunities. So whenever we do have a conversation about costs, I always want to get in my quick, you know, shot there about the revenue is recoverable and it's very reasonably accessible back to the airlines through rates and charges.
So you guys are moving towards doing a lot more customer related services on the other side of security.
Yes.
you mean the tent's going now?
I would love to be rid of the tent tomorrow. It fulfills a need, but
Yeah.
it is what it is. If you've traveled, you've
Yeah.
been
It would be nice to have something more permanent.
But Also, side note, I mean, our Island Home is a good example of a project that has taken a bunch of, a half dozen different renditions, expansions, changes in scope and scale, and costing has gone every year, increased by 10 or 15%. And it keeps coming in front of us, and it's unfortunate.
That is one of the reasons we're doing construction manager at risk and trying to really pin the number
Yeah, well,
accurately this
I mean,
time.
that's a larger scope of, construction project than this is, but it's the same idea. So I'm not surprised that we're giving back for more supplemental funding this year because we'll be priced out in 2020.
Yeah.
So.
Thank you to, I'm not sure if this is from Maria or Boyana. But we've spent 420,000 year to date, and we have $677,000 in encumbrances. So
What does that
thank you
mean?
to Maria.
What does that mean?
We've spent $420,000 and we've encumbered an additional $257,000 by contract. We just haven't paid out. that contract.
677.
Of the 17,
Yes,
is that correct?
that's correct.
All right.
Well, glad we started with that one. Hopefully we got a lot of questions.
Yeah, we all thought we were gonna have the $1 in 10 seconds.
Yeah, we thought that would be
Yeah.
an easy one. Okay. I guess we can move on from that, obviously, with a couple comments or follow-up, at a later date,
Okay.
sometime after October.
Okay, the next one, we skip a few rows going down the list, but groundwater and soil investigation, PFAS phase 3 supplemental funding. For 3.68 million. So the airport is a regulated party under the Massachusetts contingency program. We're subject to the 2180 laws. We are in a program, we're not making it up as we go, we're following a strict specific regulatory time frame with requirements by deadlines in that time frame. As the airport, we can either carry out that investigation according to the timeline at our cost, or the DEP will carry out that investigation for us, bill us their costs, and then bill us a penalty. So obviously, we want to control and steward our own investigation. So to be able to respond, we need to execute the required work, and we need to execute that work in a required time frame. The problem that, I don't want to say it's a problem, but just the uncertainty, the environment that we live in, is that we can't say specifically what the next phase of work will require until we finish current phase, or even until we don't know what next month's sampling will be until we get all of the results in from this month's sampling.
But
It's
you
like
know
a-
it's there.
We know it's there. We know there will be something.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
Airport isn't the only organization who has to work in this environment, but we're further hindered in that we're not even sure where the standards will be that will be held accountable to. We're fairly certain they're going to change, but not by how much. So we can estimate 25% more stringent standard might result in an additional expenditure of X funds, 50% increase in stringency Y funds. So we can make educated guesses. We're not just pulling numbers off of the wall, but
In your summary that we got, the $4 million still hadn't been spent. Right? That's what it
there
says.
is,
Fiscal year 25.
Yeah, it says prior appropriation 4 million, prior appropriation balance 4 million. So, but now you're looking for another 3 million.
correct,
Help me with that.
sure. Let me just jump ahead to that.
I mean, can I make a comment? Sure. This is one of those things where we know what's going on, and I think we're gonna need a balance for it to react.
It's still a
It's one
good
of those
question.
things that- Yeah,
I don't disagree with you at
Yeah,
all,
yeah,
but I
yeah.
want to know
Yeah, I got
I'm
you.
trying to understand Noah's approach to stuff.
yeah.
Okay, so there are two items that are coming up. And they're both expensive. So we're taking on currently 11 new water connections in anticipation of standard change. So we're using the standard promoted by EPA, even though that doesn't require we meet the EPA standard. Mass DEP has indicated they're going to go to a standard similar to the EPA's. So that's 11 more home connections for now that could cost up to $60,000 each. Another example of an unknown is we are just beginning scoping a study to evaluate and most likely abandon our geothermal system. The geothermal system, I'm sorry, HVAC is my worst current trade, but it pumps constant steady state groundwater up, runs it through its heat exchanger, uses that temperature differential to heat or cool a building. In doing so, that's shifted a historical plume when the system was installed in 2011 with the then terminal renovations. So we either need to move this to a closed system or abandon it.
I mean, it's not a closed system?
It's an open system.
Wow. And that was approved, obviously.
It was approved in the 2008
Wow.
renovation era. So
So what's the cost of that? That's big.
Abandoning
It's-
the system
No,
or
turning it to a closed
close?
cycle system with a new one.
oh, no more than 6 months.
Okay,
The then airport manager.
Hopefully less, please more than 6 8. That might be why
That's
they're
good.
for it.
So that's an example of the unknown. Again, the authorization is there. As we've done, we've incurred $9 million in costs, and we've always paid this off with retained earnings. Unlike, for example, the South Ramp extension, which can continually generate revenue and offset future bond obligation, PFAS is never generating the airport revenue. So
And
that's
lasting
something
money.
we've retired.
Well, one quick question. So this is supplemental funding for phase 3. Obviously, there's been a phase 2 and a phase 1. That aren't kind of shown retroactively here, but total PFAS related appropriations by the airport to date? Or approvals, if we want to call them? And I mean, that can be a
Yeah.
estimate.
Total related appropriations. I'd say we've spent 9 million, so we've probably had 10 or 12 million, I'm guessing,
Between phase 1
in
and 2.
appropriations.
Okay. So phase 1 and 2, 10 to 12, and then phase 3 is looking to be upwards of
And that's
7 to 8.
just an off the cuff.
Yeah.
Yes.
So that's part of my own.
And no, just for me, this is AIP. Again,
This is not AIP.
Not
This is all paid by airport revenue.
Covered by enterprise fund.
And so the firefighting foam requirement is mandated by FAA, but FAA's position is that this is a hazardous materials investigation for our airport and the thousands of eligible airports across the country, and they're not.
Peter, you know, we had a great presentation from the water. Mark.
Unfortunately, not here for that, but yes.
No, but there's no overlap here, is there? Or is there any overlap between money that Mark's got in earmarked?
For PFAS?
Yeah,
Don't believe so.
There's an overlap between the airport and
the water company.
The Comet's request for funding for PFAS
Yeah,
investigation.
There's probably a responsibility on both sides of
Yeah.
their own.
But there's no
Yeah.
coordination.
yeah,
between the
no,
two.
I'm just, you know, I'm just
Yeah.
thinking, well, you know, are these numbers in some way, are there any offsets between the two somewhere along the line?
yeah, I certainly want to recognize and thank Mark and Wanna for their
Of course.
assistance and coordination, but
Okay,
unfortunately, no.
Yeah, aside from their responsiveness and
yeah,
work well done when it comes to, you know, mitigating. Anything PFAS related, but
right, but the actual water connection, construction costs come from the water department.
So the items that the airport is taking responsibility for, so it's about 2 miles of water lane that we installed. Wanacom was very involved in providing specs, providing project management, advice, overseeing it, but that was all funded by the airport. And then the water connections from the main into the residents were funded by the airport.
and executed by third party utility construction companies, yeah.
Do you recall, wasn't there money in the water department request, John?
there was, but I don't have it here.
Again, so I'm assuming the airport project, the town did have its own water main, water connection project, but it's not my project.
No, but see, Mark is going, went through exactly what we're going through here, so I just can't remember now what he had in there for this. Yeah, we can look later though.
Okay, any other questions? Count water. Keep on phase three,
I got a question.
okay, good deal.
No, as far as you know, I mean, is there any way to put the whole process in a percentage and say, we're 10% there, or we're 65% there? Like, I'm just trying to wrap my head around the big picture. And I have no idea, like, where are we in that process? I mean, we have 20 years ahead of us, do we have 3,
So
as far as you know?
it's roughly a 10-year process with the understanding that the airport is providing continual monitoring much longer than that. So we're halfway through it in terms of a process timeline, but the back half of the process is where the regulated parties such as the airport gets into the remedial actions and the solutions. So depending on what those solutions are, some of which can be quite expensive, I would not be comfortable saying 50% of the way through in budget.
Yeah,
Okay. And of course, based on new standards that are decided on, agreed upon at state level, yeah, it could all, that 50% can go to 40%. Sure. You know, it's just nothing more remediation. Okay. Fantastic. Thank you, Noah. I think next on this list looks like paint beats and rubber and markings.
So relatively clean one.
Right.
So this is typically not eligible from the FAA, even though it's maintaining airfield marking. So the runway center line, for example. So marking, taxiway edge lines. All airport markings, those fall in the category of maintenance. That's the airport's responsibility to provide. Sometimes we're able to compete this for an 80% cost share state grant, which we will do. Sometimes we don't win that grant. It's an available opportunity. We do compete it, but we don't count on it. So again, the FAA sets the requirements, we maintain them to the standard, and we refresh them every year. We have a program, we've developed an internal calculator. We know the square footage of markings by component in our system. So our main runway, runway 624, has X number of square feet of markings. Crossing runway, Y number, all of our taxiways, Z. So we multiply that number by our most recent bid price from the previous year, and that's how we come up with our estimate based on the specific portion of the airfield we intend on doing. And it works out that about every 3 years, you do need to refresh the markings. So that's work for us. We will be somewhere in the range of $500,000 to $1 million. This is typically a project where we like to put out an RFP for a bid, obtain a professional markings firm to come out, knock out that work in 2 or 3 days. I haven't run the calculator yet, so I'm holding $1 million, which is at the higher end of the range. But we will only spend what we need to cover the bids that will result.
Howard, is this really a capital expense though, or is it a ongoing repair and maintenance?
Well, I can't tell them how they run the business, but in
No.
my world, it would be an ongoing operating
Yeah.
expense, but in his world, it's a capital expense, and he's gonna apply for DOT support.
Yeah,
for that.
okay,
And I think
So
for
I
our
think that-
purposes, anything over 50,000 comes to our table.
okay,
It's a good-
whether or not it's an operating cost. there,
But it's not,
Well,
it's not what you think it is or what I think it is, and normally it's how he allocates it.
Okay,
But it's a good question.
Well, it's not just Noah, I mean, from
Well,
the
he
FinCom
was
since
ubiquitous
2010,
with
it's the way that
standard
the
policy,
airport's
yeah.
always done it here, I have a question, it seems like every, maybe 4 or 5 years, you guys need to remove the layers and then redo it, which is obviously seems like a higher cost, and so, I see you're asking for $1 million. Is that right? Am I looking at the right one?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, $1 million. So, Is that what's going on this year? I mean, the allocations over the past 4 years fluctuate fairly significantly. So I'm just wondering, is it just based on, when you say paint and beads, is that you're talking about a certain runway and you obviously have different square footage certain years on what you're doing?
And it's also project approach, sometimes some
Yeah.
years we've done it in-house, some years we've contracted externally. Some years the FAA has been more stringent about the removal after 3 or 4 layers of paint. So that's actually 3 or 4 cycles, not 3 or 4 years. They want the airport to strip that surface and reprep it.
Yeah, there was a talk maybe 5 years ago. Tom was talking about maybe Hyannis and the Vineyard sharing equipment for this. Is that ever something that materialized?
No, it never panned out.
Okay.
But I think if I heard you correctly, no, I mean, that million is just a, kind of. Like, an estimate at the high end of your range, until you
Correct.
get concrete quote, and then will that replace this, will that number replace this million before it goes kind of through town meeting? Or you?
If I have
Go up to, what,
If I have a valid quote in hand,
Yeah.
we could reduce the amounts and reflect that valid.
but otherwise, you leave the million in to be conservative.
Well, if it's something we're doing most years and we know square footage, we really should have a good idea what the cost is,
I
right?
mean, based on the equation that you were
Yeah.
describing to us. And again, if a requirement, possible 80% reimbursement, but not as guaranteed, so to speak, as the AIP.
Correct, and I do want to say possible reimbursements because
Yeah.
we don't.
This isn't one where we say, yeah, they're covering 80% of it, so.
I don't remember all this stuff. I don't remember reimbursement on paint beads, but
I mean, it's good to know that's available,
yeah.
if not guaranteed. Okay, any other questions on that line item? John, good? Good. Okay, thank you on that one, Noah. I guess we will move to employee housing phase 2 supplemental funding. I know this one's had a lot of conversation in the past. So I guess, yeah, see where we're at with employee housing.
Well, that was my first talking point. We spent a lot of time discussing housing over the previous 5 years. So at the end of it, the airport went forward with dorm concept building and delayed the townhouse construction. Townhouse equals phase 2 construction. We did this until we could complete the dorm as a proof of concept and execution before requesting more funding for a second structure. So that dorm project, the phase 1 project, is in process. Site clearing is underway. The foundation permit is in hand. The modular boxes will be delivered this winter, and we're expecting occupancy in June. The total project cost for that project was around $6 million, but a large portion, again, very ballpark numbers, I'm going to say $2 million, included the site clearing and development, bringing in utilities, specifically extending the sewer main from its current termination around Sun Island Road and onto our housing site. So we still are carrying forward the project costs for $6 million for design and construction of the townhouse. When I talk about the townhouse project, I conceptualize it as saying it is one building with left and right units. We'll just give those units names, A and B. Each unit is anticipated to be its own unit, its own dwelling unit. One side might be 2 bedrooms, one side might be 3 bedrooms. So A could be 2 to 3, B could be 2 to 3. That's what I count on the design process to ultimately figure out. Whereas the dorm will house seasonal workers and 1 year-round full-time staff member in a 1-bedroom apartment. The townhouses are envisioned for mid to senior level staff who likely have a spouse and family. So our goal is to have sort of a complete life cycle, if you will, of housing from seasonal employees to full-time staff.
Okay, so phase 1 you said was the dormitory. funding.
Correct.
So phase two, so we already appropriated 3.2 million for the townhouse last year?
Yes, so we had originally asked for, we had two authorizations for the dorm. We had an original for, I believe, 3.8 and a supplemental for 3.2. So we have about 7.1 million available. Previous town meeting, we, I forget exactly the terminology, but we pledged, we dedicated $3 million of retained earnings. Or maybe it was 3.2, but we paid, essentially negated one of those authorizations, or the need for one of those authorizations.
For the dorm, sorry.
Correct.
And so is this 3.2, the 3.2 that you're referencing, that was part of phase one? The 3.2 that's on this phase two line in fiscal year 25?
I believe so. It was, could have been the fiscal year 24 bar. but
Yeah,
we-
okay, but so I guess just so I'm looking at this right, we haven't already appropriated 3.2 million for the townhouse.
We have not appropriated any funding
For
for
the townhouse, right, okay, just making sure that, because I didn't recall that either, so that 3.2 would be. With reference to the dormitory construction, the site work and the infrastructure that's already. Happened, well, so probably about. And the 6 million alone is for design and construction of the townhouse.
correct.
And all related site work and some construction.
Yeah, so, yeah, and again, I'm sorry, because I wasn't here for the
Yeah.
last year stuff. So I just want to get clear then, so. The 6 million is one building. Two dwelling units,
Correct.
2 or 3 bedrooms each, and the square footage. For that 6 million is what, 3,200 square feet, was it? I'm just trying to figure out what do we get for $6 million?
Probably not gonna be what you think.
Yeah,
My answer is always, I am held as the airport municipality to far more requirements than the private sector.
yeah, no, I'm not, I'm just trying to understand it, I'm not being critical, I'm just trying to understand it. So it says here, so the 3,600 square feet, that's the duplex building, the one you're talking about, right?
That sounds correct.
Yeah. The other, the previous 3,200,000, that's pretty well all dorm related,
That
and
was dorm,
that's gone.
Plus
you know,
another
that's-
3 million from. Retained earnings or whatever.
Yeah, so that's all gone.
Yes.
Okay. I get it. Thank you.
We had this conversation last time, so I'm gonna repeat it. I'm sorry. Last time you said that you were gonna let all the contracts and that you really were gonna push the use of the 3.2 million last time.
I'm sorry.
Last year. I said, how much of this do you need in this current year, upcoming year? And you said all of it. And I said, and you said, yeah, all the contracts are gonna be let and we will do all the work, and you did do that. Right? So all of the previous allocation is under contract.
It's all encumbered, correct.
Okay, so now you have 6 million of new money, of which you're intending fully to put under, to fully encumber in this coming year?
I'm sorry, I'm going through the timeline in my head. I believe, yeah, my goal would be town meeting would make the funds available on July 1st in 2025. I would like to have the contracts out on the street and signed at the end of calendar year 2025.
And that would be a $6 million contract?
Hopefully, it would be less than $6 million.
But that would be for the, I forget what you had, and not on the breakdown. You had 250,000 for design and 5,750,000 for construction, but you don't have a design, but you're gonna be able to design it and get the construction going in that
Yeah,
year.
so, you know, in July of 2025, I looked to execute a design contract for, let's say, $350,000.
Yeah, you said 250, but yeah.
And then in December of 2025, I looked to execute a construction contract of, let's just say, 4.5 million.
And
So I
then-
would need funds available to pay the full balance of.
And then the difference between the 4.5 and the 575 is contingencies from your perspective? Okay.
Exciting stuff. Good to hear the progress on the dormitory. Folks, I haven't been down there in a while to see very well. Good. Any other questions on this one?
Good.
Good, okay. That leads us to ARF truck airport fee replacements.
Okay.
And I believe, did you say that this is AIP eligible?
Yes, I'll start off with my strong suits, and
Yeah.
this is 90% FAA funded.
Okay, can I say any of the other ones that are too, that aren't marked as AIP, just if you want to reference that when we made a deal on set?
Sure.
Some of that might not have made it into the
So-
project.
I'll give a quick overview of our truck. So again, it's an AIP eligible project. We're holding 1.4 million. That's both for the truck and for the additional sort of rescue equipment that we buy, the Jaws of Life. The self-contained breathing apparatus that we have available that go with the truck, stretchers, Band-Aids, anything else that we might need. I apologize, I don't have a quote. We've recycled the one that we've used for the truck we are currently procuring, that we went through the capital process in the previous year. The manufacturer holds quotes for 60 days. They said, do you really need a quote? Just reuse the last one, it won't be valid anyway, so that's fine.
You put a price escalator in it. to get
I
to
believe we
1.45,
did.
I imagine. Based on how old the phone might have been.
The 1.45 feels like. Yeah, increase to account for inflation.
Yeah.
The other important item for these trucks is our existing fleet of trucks, they've all. Used aqueous film forming foam. That's up until recently been the required foam by the FAA, and that's the foam that contains fluorinated products, aka PFAS. The truck that we took through the capital process recently, that's coming from the manufacturer, and it will never see fluorine containing foam. It's going to come without having been tested with it. It will contain a fluorine-free product. So will this truck. So it's an important part of our transition strategy. So we can completely get rid of the product and any sort of legacy product at the airport. It's a little bit of the reason for the escalation in cost. The industry is also adapting to fluorine-free foam, which has a different viscosity, and it just requires different equipment and calibration on the truck to apply the foam at the required percentage.
And so this is Florida's truck airport 3, so how many of
Hello.
How many of these same kind of similar trucks are out there?
So it's a complicated answer. The short is 3. We have 3 at the airport now. We will be retiring one of them. That's its own issue. How do you properly get rid of a truck in the PFAS age without assuming long-term liability? But at the same time, we're also increasing what's known as our ARF index. This is the activity-based requirement that the FAA holds an airport to. With the new JetBlue Airbus A220-300, as soon as we hit 5 average daily operations in a month of that aircraft, we have 1 year and we're required to move up an index. So we're evaluating all of that now. The really short answer is, at a minimum, we're going to be required to have 2 trucks on hand. We would like to have 3, because we're an island. If one breaks down, we can't just get.
And we have 3 now, retiring 1, we will have 2.
Yeah.
This replacement will be one of those 2 that we'll maintain. but then there's a chance that we could get pushed up an index, which means we'll have to have a third. Which would be another new one too.
We would like to have a third,
We're like a third.
but again, that's something that I would want to convince that FAA is eligible given our situation.
Do they take seasonality into account? Or is it just any time you hit that 5?
Anytime you hit that 5, you
have to
have
have
a year
three
to
there.
adapt.
We have a year to adapt, but even if it's only, those jets only flying it out that frequently for 3 months out of the year. And so if we have to get a third and it's useful, quote unquote, for 3 months out of the year, doesn't matter that it's sitting unused or potentially unused for the other.
Correct, there isn't seasonality.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
actually, it's related more to the A220s trips it from a length threshold. The idea is that length is a substitute for a number of passengers.
Yeah. So, okay, so we have 3, we're getting rid of a PFAS related one, you go down to 2, this will replace one of those 2, and then there's a chance that we may need to acquire a third new PFAS free operation.
What's the lead time now? I mean, like if you wanted to get that extra one, if you ordered it tomorrow, when would you actually get it?
Yeah, the process right now takes a year to 18 months. A lot of airports, typically an airport will keep a truck for longer than 10 years, which is the typical grant obligation for that truck, but they're in the same position we are. They want to get rid of these legacy pieces of equipment, so that's increased the lead time.
See, so I guess with that kind of lead time, sorry to do this to it all, but shouldn't we put the third one in the
You're
budget?
saying if the FAA requires us to have one within a year?
Well, it's not even, I'm not even thinking about the FAA. I'm thinking about if shit happens, shouldn't we, as a community, want him to have the third one? Because if he can't get it for 18 months, that's not suddenly going to become, oh, I can get it in 6 weeks. So
I 100% understand where you're coming from, but to give some better context, which I haven't yet. The third truck is typically what's known as a reserve piece of equipment, and it's identified as so. So the primary, if we have 2, our primary response vehicles 1 and 2 are using fluorine-free foam. They don't have legacy. The third legacy piece of equipment is one that we will still decontaminate under our transition program. So it will reduce any sort of residual PFAS in it, by 95 to 99%. And then it will sit in reserve for the big accident.
okay, so it's not going
Likelihood-
away, that third truck.
Yeah,
You're
so
gonna,
severity and likelihood of that third truck until we can get rid of it being a future contamination issue is fairly low.
This is the apparatus, right, you're talking about?
Yeah.
So some years ago, not maybe 8 years ago or something, Tom took me through there and, they are meticulous. I mean, they're well taken care of. But I know the older ones are pretty old.
1980.
But they look, 88, yeah, they look like they're 5 years old. I mean, they're very well taken care of. I would think that, I mean, if it's not usable because of PFAS product, that's a different story. Get rid of it. It's useless to you, but if it's convertible to new product, and you guys are used to it and you know the vehicle extremely well, why would you put it over? I guess that's what you would do, is why would you put it over in the storage facility over there?
Yeah.
In the case you have it, I mean, what's it worth to you if you unload it, but if it's still a work, or if it's still doing its job, I mean, I'm sure when you guys have, I mean, do you use it for drills? It's get used for drills, or, but I guess why would you just keep it? I mean, if you're talking about that, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, the
I know it's
1980.
old, but
yeah,
we're
the
trying to
1980
persuade you to spend money.
I love it. I mean, let's keep it up for the others. The 1980s
They're
are
all
good,
pretty good.
but it's hard to support now with parts. and
True,
equipment.
yeah, true.
But we do want to do that on a temporary basis for Airport 3, which is our 2016 era Striker. We do want to decontaminate that and use it as our reserve piece of equipment because it's still a very effective piece of equipment.
So there must have been a time way back, you only had one, and when you get a new one, you just kept keeping the old ones. Seemed like.
We've had the skill and desire to keep these things
Yeah.
up and running operational, and there have been times where one goes down because of a pump failure, and we can just bring the next one right up and into certification.
Yeah.
And the striker, is that the one that's 1988?
No,
That's a TI 1500 is the 1980
No, I'm just thinking,
It's a T-1500.
T-1500.
I'm just trying to bring some levity to it. I think it'd look great, Daffodil Weekend to have it in front of the parade.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you for the info. Part three, looks like, art building rehab.
Okay.
5.4 million. Any AIP kickbacks on this one?
No AIP eligibility on this, it would be considered maintenance. So just to back it up for a minute. We own and operate our own fire department. It's similar in size, scale, and use to the town's municipal fire department, except it is tuned for airport and aircraft rescue. Even though we do provide mutual aid to the town. So this is the base for the airport operations and line service. The facility supports the safety as well as the economic generation of the airport. It was built with a metal roof, and the metal roof is integrated into the framing. It drains rainwater through internal gutters instead of external downspouts. It is rusting. So it's a difficult repair. It's not like re-roofing 3-tab shingles. There's going to be a amount of design effort, and it's probably going to involve someone with some advanced metal roofing experience. So we're anticipating that to be a cost item. A lesser cost item is the flooring rehabilitation. I believe it's linoleum tiles and poured epoxy, both which need refreshing, and those don't feel to me to be necessarily, really expensive or out of scope items. But then the next most expensive system is the removal of the foam system. We talk about PFAS and foam. Built into that station was a concentrate to dilute foam system into truck. So as part of our effort, we want to remove that system. I believe it involves some hard work. Some of that piping has been embedded in the concrete floor. And we also have to dispose of it, not only in process, but as sort of end landfill appropriate. So all of that adds up to the price tag, which we have at $5.4 million.
So, sorry, my supplemental document opening, and is that based on a specific kind of quotes? Contract?
It's based off of our engineers' estimate.
Estimate, gotcha. Okay. Other questions?
Good. Good.
how old's the building?
2008?
The
2009?
big gray metal building on.
Yeah, I
if
think
you're going
it was
down there,
9 or 10.
past the airport.
Nine or
Yeah,
10.
yeah. Really good looking building. It looks like it's. Very.
Don't
very
say
well
that to the
maintained.
HTC.
Yeah. Go there for land. Yeah, interesting. And I mean, so aside from maybe the gutter, system, so to speak, that may or may not be very. Work very well. I mean, the other side is general wear and tear, so to speak, to what we're looking for. Obviously, the PFAS is probably a big chunk of this, kind of removing that, anything PFAS related.
Yeah,
5.4 million.
I don't believe the system removal is itemized. No, I'm sorry, it is, so. I'm sorry, I'm looking at the engineer's notes.
Yeah. Okay,
I'm sorry, it's 3 million for the roof.
that's that gutter part of the roof that.
Correct.
Would introduce water into a building,
Yeah, that's a wild system.
unless it's something to do with a tarmac.
If it's airport specific, that it would be. Yeah. Anyways. Anyone else? Any questions, comments, concerns? No, good, okay. Thank you, for that, Noah. Hard stands, gates 1 and 2A.
Okay. This is my favorite one because I believe we have it dialed in and I like the pictures that I have in your packet. Okay, so the airport has been rehabilitating and installing new hard stands, typically 1 or 2 at a time over the last 5 years. This is in response to airline upgauging. Upgauging just means the practice of putting larger jets onto their service routes. So this project will install a hard stand, which is, it's a concrete pad instead of asphalt. Concrete has better static load bearing capacity than asphalt. It's also the preferred pavement for areas of repeat refueling, because jet fuel can wear away at asphalt. I believe I said this will install a hard stand onto spot number 1 where none exists and improve the existing one on number 2. If there's any confusion on numbers, as I've presented this over the years, we've renumbered our hard stands this spring. So they now start at number 1 from the runway and move sequentially up to number 7 as you move toward Nantucket. So we're asking for 500,000 based on estimates from this year's project. So that was a completed project that we're basing those estimates on with a little bit of escalation. We will compete this project for state ASMP funding at an 80% cost share, but again, it's not guaranteed. It was a state suggestion that we compete it, so I think there might be better than typical odds, but again, I don't count on that reimbursements. And I suggest the capital committee doesn't either. If we do self-fund the entire project, we simply set our rate recovery to recover 100% of our costs over an interval, typically 5 to 10 years. We have a specific rate and charge fee for a ramp fee for our airlines who will use this. So they will bear those costs.
But you still have enough retained earnings to pay for it to pay back the short-term borrowing, even though the recovery for the fees is 5 years or 10 years.
So again, our first choice would be to pay off with retained earnings, given our certified amounts and other items on the list.
Okay,
I'm sorry, first choice would be to accept ASMP 80%.
of course, yeah,
Retained earnings would be second, and then reassess to the airlines would be the third.
okay.
Okay, great, easy enough, everyone. Good.
Yep, good.
Great. All right. Where the hard stand is. It's good to know. Okay, new GSE storage facility.
Okay.
GSE ground. Staging. Well, storage.
Ground service equipment.
Well, somebody didn't read ahead.
Ground service equipment. My computer's blocking me out.
Okay, so the airport has made commitments to manage our existing and our expanded ramp in as noise sensitive of a manner as possible. To accomplish that, instead of aircraft moving under their own power, we need to move that or move those items for them. And to do that, we have tugs now. We will need more tugs. We've already, I believe, I think we put one in our list this year that I'll get to. And we will need a couple more. We're also committing to purchase more GPUs. A GPU is a ground power unit. So instead of an airport running a small engine called an APU or an auxiliary power unit on the ramp located on their aircraft that is noisy, we can run and power the aircraft from a ground unit that runs on either diesel fuel, propane, or even possibly electrically charged. The Vineyard is actually running a couple of these new electrical units now. I'm looking to see how they work for them. So that's a ground power unit. Then there are also preconditioned air units where you're doing just that. You're providing air conditioning for a plane. All of these items, we don't want them to sit outside in the weather. We've made an investment in them, so we're looking to build a GSE garage. The garage is what the garage is with municipal construction costs, I believe. I don't have my packet open in front of me, but we're not asking for a Cadillac of a building, but we want to give you a realistic estimate of what we think it will be. We will assess this cost to our business aviation jet community through our ramp fee, through our landing fee, and through our service fees. But we will have to front the cost of that building.
Not cheap. I mean, you know, all the equipment in there is worthy of protecting, you know, and, is anything stored in here that is any of the airlines, or is it all airport owned equipment? Is there any JetBlue, any, trade winds, anything for anyone?
No, it's all our equipment.
I'm always in favor of storing stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'll always approve it, but it's just 4 million for this storage building, it's just. I mean, there's no utility attached to it, is there? Is there any like, support, like electrical support or any sort of support component? For the airport inside this, as far as infrastructure, or is it just a shell?
It's a shell, but and Preston, please correct me if I'm wrong. We're holding for significant electrical investment because we believe
Yeah.
a lot of these, the tugs that we're purchasing now, they're electros, they're electric. So we're installing fast charging capability in there.
Yeah.
Inside the shed, so to speak.
So the electrical power, sort of
Yeah.
amperes and voltage, and then minimal heat as well. Just to keep it above freezing, so the batteries don't freeze.
Does this support everything that you guys have? Everything you need to store? Or is there stuff still outside, or is there plenty of room in there?
We've estimated the square footage based off of our anticipated. So, you know, that's again, a 5 to 10 year plan.
Where's it going? On the back.
Adjacent to the existing arc station.
Oh, yeah, I can't get it to open.
Oh, you could, I had
The
it.
colored
open.
one is just next to the, art.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
And so with items like the ground, kind of electrical stations that private jet, private plane could hook up to, where the external air conditioners that you could use as opposed to jets running on their own fuel and creating noise and exhaust and everything else. Do they pay for those services directly, or are those charged, you know, for private aircrafts through ramp fees or other, you know, kind of all encompassing fees?
The towing is built into the ramp fee. The ground power units are billed per use. I think we have a fixed 2-hour charge
Okay.
per ground power unit and per conditioned air unit.
Yeah, so they're more direct as you use it. Yeah.
And so it's based on, but you haven't gotten bids yet. We're not even there yet, right?
No, this is informed. We did have a similar project. It was smaller in scale because it was on our then inventory of GSC equipment. And this was several years ago. Tom would have presented it, but I think it was $2 million for a garage.
Yeah, so that's the other thing. What we do know is, in 2 years, this will be, 5.6 million.
Or we set up with like the police department,
Yeah.
Yeah,
up the side.
and it's just,
Cold storage essentially,
I just wish it was less expensive.
or that you could get the process going
Yeah.
quicker.
Yes.
But it's just,
The problem
I don't
is that
recall,
that hasn't
don't you
gotten
recall
approved.
when he presented it, why it got pushed out for a number of years?
cost,
We didn't like the cost.
cost,
Oh, really?
100%.
Oh, okay, we like the cost now.
Yeah.
Well, that cost.
cost.
I'll extend credit to many members of airport staff who have really built a revenue machine, and I believe we can
Better
successfully pass those costs on.
It's true.
And 5+ years ago, probably might have undersized it, I would imagine, based on what we're expecting, what we did now for the next 10 years. Big enough if we built it 5 or 6 years.
Yeah, I just wanna make sure, you know, in 10 years,
Yeah.
when, you know, who knows how it's gonna, how the airport's gonna change, that we don't need another one, you know, love to build this for, you know, long time.
Okay, and so, again, I mean, this 4.1 is the number that would go, you know, essentially to town meeting. It probably would be refined a little more than
Correct.
Yeah. Okay.
I'll definitely get some more questions if you come back. By some,
Stop that.
That's all, so to speak, no AI.
no, I mean, it's a high ticket item, just like the last one that Tom presented and the police station.
Do you remember that maintenance
Cost.
building that got turned down to store the equipment last?
Yeah,
It's been
fire.
turned down more
It's
than
always because of cost.
3 times.
It's ridiculous. It's a really good thing.
I think it's
DPW, airport, police.
Right. The
No
air-
one opposes it, it's all cost.
just wait till you see the new price for DPW.
It's really
all
crazy.
costs.
That's really crazy.
Just remember
So-
when it was 18.
In the essence of time,
Yeah.
we've got 3 more, and just for the GSE, so no AIP or anything available for that.
No,
But
I
Peter, can
wouldn't
just think
anticipate
one-
any cost share.
No,
funding.
that's more of an elective.
Because you said, and this is just something for us to think about later, but you just said something interesting about the, you know, anything that's really construction related, it only goes one way and it goes faster than we ever think it's going to be. I mean, maybe we should look at our process and see, you know, stuff that is truly construction related. Maybe we should be the ones that are saying we need to fast track this.
We do. That's how the scoring works.
Okay,
So you get to score it higher because
Well-
you think that it's urgent
Well,
to do to save money. in the future.
To John's point-
Yeah, our score.
Yeah, I think you're referring more to the.
I'm
overall
thinking about
process.
the
Yeah,
overall
process,
process, yeah.
Yeah.
Caution has happened, that what John is saying has not happened as much.
Right.
I get what you're saying.
And that's probably a greater conversation.
I mean,
for
we're just sticking our head in the sand, really.
And a lot of it is dictated by public bidding, open,
Yeah,
public, bidding, contracting, approval processes that are delayed on the public scale as opposed to private, I would imagine.
I think sooner or later we
Bring
should.
it up again, though,
Yeah.
bring it up again when.
Okay.
when full committee.
A worthy conversation.
Not meaningful.
Not-
It's also
Not this one.
about phasing what we can manage.
Okay,
Okay, last 3, South Apron noise barrier.
Okay. So we're also working to address public comments that resulted in us abandoning the noise abatement feature associated with the south ramp expansion, which was an earthen berm. And instead design and construct a barrier instead. We're in the design phase now, and again, we'll have a better evolution of costs over the next several weeks. But ultimately, I don't know if we'll be able to have bid prices until closer to ATM. It's my position, and I believe I represent the airport commission on this, that the airport should pursue and move this wall forward, given that we did bring a noise abatement feature to the table and we're sort of substituting products based off of feedback. We've also, in the design process, the reason we're holding $5 million is based on a really simple item. A highway style concrete noise wall, which again, it's not visible from the public side, just from the cockpit of a business jet. These are commonly built on the mainland, on the Cape. There's good consistent pricing for those. The simple 14-foot or 20-foot concrete barrier at that length would cost $2.5 million on the mainland. We think it would cost $5 million here. We have to look into issues of constructability. Can it be poured here, or would it be trucked here? Is there an alternative product besides concrete? Are there additional features that can be designed that can further attenuate noise abatement? And now we believe it can be compatible with solar panels, and it faces southeast. Actually, it faces more south than east. So that's an important design consideration. The best I can do right now is $5 million, and we do want to keep this moving for the possibility of starting construction prior to we're starting construction within next year's busy season. We wouldn't be able to start construction prior to.
Construct through the summer and have completed.
Yeah, and those are the issues of constructability, how quickly this can be built to go up. Is it modular in nature? Can crews just consistently crane it in while being compatible with airport operations, or would it have to wait until fall? Those are the items we're still trying to figure out. And those all have price.
Get a 9-month period where it'd be easy to be working in there.
People that like to watch airport activity, not gonna be thrilled.
Well, so this is blocked from the public view behind. Well, where Monahans Road curves out from the airport fence, so there's a line of residences, then there's 100 feet of trees, then there would be the noise wall.
How long would it be?
Yeah, when you see those.
Yeah, I don't have the number, it's the length of the ramp
Probably 1,000
expansion.
feet.
Wow.
Yeah.
What is the cost compared to what was proposed with the barn?
So it's hard to say. It's a long answer. The short answer is it's an additional $2 million.
I kind of have my memory that it was around 3 million.
Additional 2 mil.
Additional $2 million.
And that was using the dirt that was remediated for the PFAS. In a remediation project that Larry would cover, that was that burn. That makes sense.
Yeah, there was a big outcry.
There's no pushback on just a barrier in general, is there?
No,
So far?
we did through our regular airport commission meetings, we had outreach, we solicited feedback. The wall was much more supported than the berm.
Is there any abutters who are losing a view that we might have to accommodate?
I don't believe any portion of the wall would be visible by an abutter or anyone traveling the public road.
View of the airport, you're saying? Pardon? The view of the airport?
Well, it doesn't matter. People, their views are their view.
Yeah. I got you.
But the trees are between the community and the,
And so the wall would be, I'm gonna say roughly 20 feet tall in concept. The vegetation is 30 feet tall.
Anybody else?
well, only that, Peter, this would be, I'm assuming, we'd have to check this out, but for the community, this would be something sooner rather than later, perhaps would be appreciated.
I would think for the
You probably know
residents
more
that,
about this than me.
may have issue with sound from
Yeah.
Lake jets
Yeah.
in that area, right? And that's always been kind of a ongoing nuisance or something, I would guess, but.
Well, it was the issue of just the, as planes were throttling up, the jet, propulsion, whatever, going into the neighborhoods. But that was sorted out with parking somewhat. Yeah.
Great.
Yep.
Cool. So the people on the town floor meeting agree as well. All right. Triturator?
Triturator.
Triturator.
I never knew what that was, but how in the world did they get that name?
Triturator. I don't know who got the
It's
name,
like a
but
garbage disposal.
it's an inline sewer garbage.
Macerator?
disposal.
It's a macerator.
It's a bigger macerator than you might have on your boat. So. So. As corporate aircraft have gotten bigger, their lav tanks hold more waste. This is difficult for us to process in our existing connection. So we want to upgrade our existing connection. What this looks like, if you have any knowledge of the wastewater system and you would work with David Gray. The pump stations typically have a above ground cabinet and a below ground set of pumps under a steel grate. These are usually built off-site and delivered on a skid and installed in line. You attach, the airport staff would attach the lav cart to the pump, press a few buttons. Waste would be ground up and it would flow by gravity into the sewer.
So this is deposited as airport waste. In the end, looks like airport waste, so, if the airport's getting charged, if there's a sewer charge for the airport. Based on that, I'm hoping that you're getting revenue above and beyond what that is. And it's not just a push,
The way these systems would typically work, the cabinet is backed by an operating system. It'll keep a total of gallonage, number of operations. We'd use that as a fee remittance basis for wastewater. We have a line item charge for lab cart services that we have it billed out as a fixed cost now. But if we get into, the difference between maybe a small citation jet and an Airbus 330, it's a large difference in volume. We can have a scalable charge by gallon, and we can institute through that sort of point of sale or back end system.
So good revenue recovery opportunities with it.
So, is this like a vital component to airport service? Or do you guys, is this just something you like to have because maybe 1 out of 10 planes likes to unload?
It's both. The problem that commercial service aircraft can have is they potentially will have to cancel an outbound flight if they can't bring a mechanic here to service issues with the lavatory on the aircraft. That has happened, not very often, 1 or 2 times in my tenure where an aircraft has canceled an outbound flight because there was an issue with the lavatory that could have been resolved by us pumping it.
But then also, I mean, airports are relying on weight with everything, so that all ties in. But, I mean, I guess in the scheme of things, it's just short money.
Seems like a reasonable request for something that will probably pay itself off and also see through airport services offered. Everybody else good? Yeah.
Good.
Okay. From stretch?
Okay. So this, our GSE list, ground service equipment, and airport equipment, this is. Sorry, I pulled the wrong one up. We have combined a few separate pieces of equipment together into a single request. Okay. So we have the following. We have a preconditioned air, a combination preconditioned air GPU unit for an ADG-3 aircraft. ADG-3 just means it's a big corporate aircraft, like a Gulfstream 650 or Global 5000. To run these larger aircraft, they have to have the higher average. They're physically bigger and they're more expensive. But as you drive through the ramp, that's more and more of what we handle. They're actually quieter than a lot of older, smaller aircraft, but there's a perception. So we want to make sure we have a piece of equipment that can handle that sort of size and scale of aircraft. We have electro tug, as I discussed before, to keep the ramp quiet. We tug aircraft around instead of having to move around on our own power. I'm missing something.
Yeah, I think that first one you mentioned doesn't seem like it's in there.
No, there is a mistake on there and I apologize. I think I have a copy and paste, including some text from the GSE building.
Yeah, I get.
Preston, do you want to bail me out? I think we also had a vehicle replacement. maybe
I
airport
show a
forward.
bus,
Not on
passenger bus
vacation?
on this one.
So I've got the F-350, the electro tug, the John Deere
the
mower, and the passenger bus.
Okay.
That's the 4 that are on there.
That should be great.
What is the one you first
Yeah,
mentioned?
it's been on my list.
GPU preconditioned air.
Oh,
Okay, so then that,
That's great.
sorry, that isn't on the Preston, could I?
Going,
That is-
this opting.
This was from.
Athens and then to Santorini, but doing a day.
So I'm sorry,
Time of year.
the passenger bus, we have 2 to 3 buses now. They wear out quickly over a few years. We use them constantly to for shuttle staff and flight crew and passengers to and from aircraft,
As I said.
rather than them walking across the ramp. So we have a replacement bus. Again, we build that into our fee structure. We have the electro tug that I had mentioned, and we have
Truck on there.
we have an F-350. This is, I believe, a stake body truck. That's used by airport maintenance. We are trading in the old truck. I believe it's a 20-year-old vehicle. It's just added service life.
Is that they're replacing A4?
A4.
That is, yeah, 1999, 250, replacing with a new 350.
Correct, and that price includes a plow package and I believe a vehicle outfit.
Okay, so yeah, we have these 5 either new or replacement items, the AGV being the majority of the cost. But everything looks. Yeah, no true surprises there. Any questions on any individually?
Yeah, sure, it seems like it's all,
Yeah, justified.
well,
Justifiable.
just 1.5 million.
Okay, well, that gets us to the end of our current fiscal year list.
Peter,
Yes,
so I got some notes and I just wanted to make sure that I got everybody's thoughts. Because, so I was wondering, did anybody need any additional information or have any comments on the rescue building?
rescue, say building,
Yep, rehab,
no, I don't think I did.
okay. How about hard stands? GSC?
Nope.
Okay,
So,
noise barrier? And FBO ground handling support.
I mean, it's really just what the final quotes come in at, but if we don't know those before.
Okay,
it
great.
goes To town meeting, then
Okay, I got everything else. All right, thanks.
thank you. Noah, anything else to go over, find on?
Yeah, I appreciate the opportunity. You're all welcome if you want to sit down and see any project locations or talk about the AIP program, please let me know. You're welcome to visit.
We're gonna talking about department liaisons, so it might happen where, one or two of us come out and just, we'll go through these requests.
Otherwise,
Not done with us.
yeah, we'll let you go. Appreciate it. Thanks for coming in.
Thanks.
Thank you.
And,
Thanks.
obviously, our fearless leader is not with us today. So I do not think I will opine on election of officers, department liaisons, Rory evaluations. Report writing, work
So perfect, like,
Thank-
Rory evaluation. Just kidding.
yeah. Yeah, the essence of getting out of here before, no, John also.
No, you guys.
Get across.
Oh, gotcha. Or committee report, so with that being said, I will open it up to any comments from the group. Anything in particular? Yes, no? Okay, I don't think so. Then I will let me know that the next meeting is September 19th, 2024, most likely right here at 3 p.m. and ask for a motion to adjourn. So moved. Second.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? None. Okay, great.
I'll try to log in remotely next week.